get into it this week, I just want to put a content warning at the top here. We will be getting into a little bit of discussions on weights and calorie counts and different dieting methods. So if that's not something that you're comfortable with, by all means, skip it, but share us with somebody else who would be comfortable with it instead. But, you know, no hard feelings if you're not comfortable hearing that type of thing. It's just sort of necessary when we're discussing sort of the methodology in some of these studies and then our own experiences. So just take care. And yeah. So anyway, on to the topic.
Yeah. What are we talking about today?
Well, today's the continuation of last week's episode where we talked about that study I'd found where it found an actual like disconnect between the brain and what is in somebody's gut if they're obese or even formerly obese.
Which is wild.
I know. And so
can you refresh my memory? Was that like a genetic thing? Was it like what was causing the disconnect?
They don't know what causes it.
Okay.
But they've at least identified there's a disconnect, which is huge.
Oh, huge, yeah.
When you consider that, like, as a society, I think, even globally, like, I don't know that it's, like, exclusive to Western societies, but, you know, it's seen as a personal failing if you lose weight or if you can't lose weight or if you lose weight and then you gain it back.
It's a character flaw, yeah.
Yeah, so that study found that there was a difference between it was within the basal ganglia, and that part of the brain called within the basal ganglia called the stratum, I don't know, regulates eating behavior, but also they posited might function as a post-eating caloric sensor, which then regulates the appropriate response to food exposure. So what they found was in injecting a glucose mixture into the gut of obese people and the gut of thin people, there was no difference in their brain response. But if they provided a lipid infusion into the gut of obese and lean people, the lean participants of the study had a dopamine response in their basal ganglia. Obese participants did not have a dopamine response at all and did not develop that dopamine response after weight loss.
That's so crazy.
Right. So that led the researchers to conclude that dopamine release in lean people was not nutrient specific because it happened with the glucose as well. But is also, it makes that part of the brain, the stratum, a general caloric sensor in lean people. So that sensor is broken in people with obesity.
And it's not like it fixes just by losing weight.
Correct.
So it's not
it's kind of like, yeah, like it's kind of like ADHD, like it's just neurobiological. It's not something where, and potentially like with ADHD, there can be medications to help treat that and to either bypass that problem or rectify it, but it's not as simple as just eat less.
Right.
Because there's that thing, and like we discussed it in our diet episodes, but like there is that point where like all you're doing is thinking about food, even if you're dieting, even if you're at a quote unquote healthy weight.
I would say especially if you're dieting.
You're right.
Or especially people that are underweight, the amount of time and energy and focus that goes into what you're eating, when you're eating it, how much you're eating, how much you ate earlier, how much you ate yesterday, what you plan on eating tomorrow. I mean, it's like all consuming.
Like obsessively checking the menus of places I was going to go, obsessively entering in and fucking with the portion sizes, either in like MyFitnessPal or the Weight Watchers app, like seeing, okay, well, if I have just 2 ounces of chicken breast, then I can save 2 points and I can have, you know, a little bit more rice. Or if I eat, you know, this much less, then it's that same thing where you're
whipped cream on my sugar-free Jell-O later.
Right. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And it's not just a matter of like, yeah, there's something to be said for making those like healthy swaps and, having some cottage cheese with berries and as like a sweet afternoon snack, not as like your dessert,
Right, but like
but
as
like
a,
having
oh, this is a
something.
good high protein thing that's going to be pretty filling for me that I enjoy
Right.
eating is a
Yes.
totally different
And
thing.
right. And if that's something where it's like that's what you're doing for every single meal. Like there was that reel that I think you sent it to me or I sent it to you, but it was like comparing like health moms
Oh
in the
yeah, like
90s
almond
versus health
moms
moms
with
now.
like everything
Yes.
is poison moms now.
Right.
Yes.
So it was like this woman's like spraying, I can't believe it's not butter spray onto her toast. And she's like, so delicious. But it's like that, where it's like, that's not food.
Right.
Like,
It's not identifiable. And like, and that's the thing is you've got two extremes where like there's nothing wrong with healthy swaps, but when
mhm,
your whole world revolves around healthy swaps and you're not ever allowing yourself to just have the regular version of something,
right.
or when
Or
you view
anytime
everything
you're
as
exposed to
poison,
the regular version of something, you completely overindulge
right? Because you
and
never
binge
had
on
it.
it. Right. And so then, and you have this kind of thing where like your brain doesn't tell you, I've had enough to eat. I'm good.
Have you seen the
Like,
that guy, I think it's Rob Anderson. He's the one who does the Seventh Heaven, um, where he'll like watch a Seventh Heaven episode and like does the
yeah,
he
I know those videos.
he did one that I sent to one of the group chats I'm in, and it was like, would this kill Gwyneth Paltrow? And it was all of these different items, like, oh, a chicken nugget, it would definitely kill her. And it was like those sugar cookies at the store that have like the frosting on top. He was
Oh,
like, she would definitely die.
the styrofoam
Yes.
frosting. Yeah.
And that's kind of what I think of is like this just these like really extreme stances, which like aren't good in any facet of life when it
Yeah.
comes to anything. Like it truly is like a balancing act of like finding what works for you and like what's a good mix for you. Like I'm at a point in my life
Right.
where if I want a chocolate chip cookie, I'm just gonna have a chocolate chip cookie. Like
Mhm.
that's just the long and short of it.
Yeah. And I think,
Life is too
what that
short.
stud yeah, totally. And what that study showed us last week is like, as much as like even myself, like as much as I want that balance and I strive for that balance, it is really fucking hard work for
Oh
me.
yeah.
Like
Yeah.
I am very much aware of what I'm planning to eat for a day,
Mhm.
especially during the work week when I'm like packing my lunch or planning what I'm going to have for
Because
lunch.
there is so much more foresight involved with it than
Right. And so I
being
have to
home.
really think about like, you know, okay, well, I want to have like, and to the extent there is like a normal thing of like, okay, well, I know that we're going out to dinner tonight and I want to have that really good steak that I know that they have there. So I'm going to be a little bit lighter on my lunch
Mhm.
today because one, I don't want to be full for dinner. And two, like I know that dinner is going to be heavy. So I don't want a heavy
Right.
lunch. So like that's a normal thing that even thin, like naturally thin people do, but it's not like like you said, there's it I mean, it took me 2.5 years of working with a dietitian to get to that point
Right, and
where
it's
it's
like how
not
you're gonna
every
feel.
day that I'm having that thought and like, well,
Right.
what if I want to have this for dinner, then I can't have this and I have to restrict and I
Right.
can only take nibbles of things throughout the day because I'm limiting my calories so much that if I just
Right.
eat it as a regular meal, then I'm going to like panic eat because my brain will be like, we don't have enough food. That was not
Right.
enough. We're not
And then by the
full.
time you're eating, you're like starving, and then you wind up like
Right.
overeating, and then like you don't feel good. So it's
And then you don't even know what your hunger signals are because you're so busy ignoring them or denying them
right.
that like your body it's just like it's this horrible cycle, but it apparently starts with your brain just
Which
like
is,
not doing
and I
this.
think like
And it explains I think why like you look at my brother and you look at me. My brother is a string bean. Like
he's shaped like a zipper.
I mean truly, the guy is like I think he's 5'10" or 5'11" and maybe weighs 140 pounds. He is so
Best.
thin.
I have none of those genes.
And I am not.
Right. Right.
And like you look at my father's side of the family, I for sure take after them.
Mhm.
Like I look like most of my aunts and uncles on my dad's side of the family, and I look like a lot of my cousins. And like, so clearly there's this genetic component to it. But even on my mom's side of the family, Jake is extremely thin.
Right.
And, he just doesn't gain weight. Like, he doesn't really eat. And he just doesn't, like, it's the funniest thing watching him and PK at the same table at meals because my brother will like cut the most like perfect piece of his food, and he cuts one piece at a time and eats it, and then we'll have a whole ass fucking conversation with you and then go back for his second piece. Meanwhile, before he cut his first piece, PK was done. His plate was cleaned.
He's like, I don't have time for this.
Basically.
I have different ADHD.
It is so wild because it's like that thing in The Office where they're talking about the extremes of the
Oh my
human
God.
body.
That is one of the funniest scenes to me ever. Ever. What do you think they're talking about? Probably the extremes of the human form. So good.
But like, it's that kind of thing where, and my mom's like, I don't know, I just stop eating when I'm hungry. And I don't, if I'm at a buffet or something, she doesn't take more food than she's going to eat. And whereas like if I'm at a buffet, I'm like, give me one of everything, please.
Right.
And I've always been that way.
Well, and you think
and it's
about
not like I grew up in a place where we had like I didn't grow up food insecure.
Right.
So I know I don't have like food trauma from that respect.
No, but I mean, when were we ever taught to learn hunger cues?
Mm-hmm.
Like,
No, I know you've mentioned it
like
before.
we've grown up in an era where it was like clearing your plate, or, this is when your dedicated mealtime is at school, so this is when you're eating. It wasn't like
which is still the case, and like I understand why there's dedicated meal
like it
times at
has to be,
school.
but I don't think there was ever. We never got like real like nutritional education. They'd slap the food pyramid up there, which is like outdated. And
I mean, yeah, when we got the food pyramid, it was, grains and breads and this and that
cereal.
and the other, and right, and have as much of it as possible.
Right.
Like, and it was, I mean, it's the base of the pyramid, so like it didn't even.
Protein
so then
was
when
like
they're
one
like
of the smaller things that you were supposed to eat. So
right.
yeah, it's definitely like I think that it like so much of it is coming down to like the lack of nutritional education and even teaching hunger cues. Like those are things that just like were not. It was like, this is the food pyramid. Don't be fat. Period. Like that was the education that we got with that, which is like awful because like when you're a chubby kid, like I'm looking around at my friends like having hit puberty significantly early. So like I started, my body shape was just completely different. And knowing that I was like eating pretty healthy, but it didn't matter because my body shape was different. My build was different. Even if I'm at a lower weight now, my build is still pretty much the same.
Mm-hmm. Oh, totally. And even, like I was looking at, like in Facebook memories, some old pictures came up, and even, at what I would probably call my like natural weight that I could like easily, a weight that I was probably maintaining without really thinking about it in college. I still was like, and I recall feeling fat.
Mm-hmm.
I recall, and part of it I think was like the fashion at the time with those low-rise jeans that like just are Satan's mistress, frankly. Like it's just terrible between that and then like being like trying to find a bra that is supportive and comfortable and I can wear all day when I'm running to class.
The diet
and,
culture was really,
it was really
really
bad.
toxic and really pervasive. And I mean, socially in media, like magazines.
Well, and yeah, I know that like we shit on the 90s a lot, but Paris Hilton was big until like 2010, 2012.
Mm-hmm.
And she had a rail thin body. So it was still that body type that was, I mean, look at even Christina Aguilera was seen as curvy in that Dirty video that she did. And it was like, and I remember hearing on the radio, like they were talking about that video, and one of the DJs was like, well, she's kind of like put on some weight.
Right.
And one of the other DJ was like, what the fuck? No, they didn't say fuck, but they were like, what do you mean she put on weight? And he was talking about how like when you straighten your legs, you get that like ridge above your knee as like a sign of
Get a
fatness.
fucking
And that's what I
hobby.
heard on a local radio
Right.
station. And it was just one of those things where it's like going to school in the morning, cool. Now I have to
As you're
consider
sitting on the
how
bus,
fat my knees
stretching your
are.
leg out, like, what about when I stretch my,
Oh,
yeah.
totally. All the
I
time.
mean, it's
So it's just like
so
one of those
sad.
things where yeah, yeah. And it's, you know, I bet he has no recollection of ever saying that.
No, and I hope he's
Um
struggling with butthole spiders. Personally.
um so anyway, so yeah, last week we talked about that, and I promised that this week there would be a part 2 because we're going to talk about Ozempic, which is big in the news right
Mm-hmm.
now. Um and it's a GLP-1 medication. So a study that I refer to a little bit later in my notes had a great like description in the introduction of it that really described like treating obesity in a great way, I think. So this whole thing is a quote. Historically, the treatment of obesity focused almost exclusively on lifestyle based approaches. However, evidence that diet and exercise prompt physiological counter-regulatory mechanisms that limit weight reduction and impede weight maintenance has led to the realization that obesity is a complex, multi component metabolic disease of energy homeostasis involving central and peripheral mechanisms. Recent studies with long acting glucagon like peptide 1, GLP-1 receptor, agonists demonstrated that greater efficacy with acceptable safety could be achieved by targeting the pathways of endogenous nutrient stimulated hormones. Glucose dependent insulinotropic polypeptide,
Oh,
GIP,
damn, good job.
another new
It's really good.
another nutrient stimulated hormone, regulates energy balance through cell surface receptor signaling in the brain and adipose tissue. So that refers to a different study that is a similar medication, but it's looking at the GIP versus the GLP-1 receptors. But it's all about these nutrient stimulated hormones. And as we discussed last week, when they did those infusions into the gut, they found that those hormones, the release of those hormones is what triggers that dopamine release, or should be triggering that dopamine release in the brain to tell you when you're full, to tell you when to stop eating. The purpose of these medications, these GLP-1 and GIP medications, is to force your brain to acknowledge production of those hormones, more or less. So similar to how
It's like synthetically creating that communication between your stomach and your
mm-hmm.
brain that's disrupted.
Yeah. Kind of like how an SSRI can like flood your brain with serotonin or dopamine to like boost your mood. Similar. If we just give you more of the thing that you're lacking, or even if you're not lacking the thing that your brain just isn't receiving, then you have a better chance of your brain receiving that message and acting on it appropriately.
Which like it is incredible how kind of liberating it is when you're looking at something from a brain chemistry level and
Yeah.
you're removing all of these like personal failings from the equation. It's like, no, this isn't me being lazy, or this isn't me just not liking these foods. I mean, even
Yeah.
ADHD, you know, we've talked about the brain chemistry component. We've also talked about how because of the brain chemistry, it causes you to crave certain types of food.
Right.
And it totally makes it like, oh, the reason that I will turn into a goblin if I don't get bread is tied to my brain chemistry, which is completely outside
Right.
of my control. Like I can do my best, but that's all I can do.
Right.
And this is like the same thing. It's like, no, there is a brain chemistry disconnect that is
Right.
causing this cascade of issues for you.
And I think part of it, I mean, obviously this research, as we'll get into, has been expanding our understanding of how our whole body works together,
Right.
and that it's not it's like each organ isn't its own closed
Mm-hmm.
system, which I hope medical doctors and scientists have known for a very long time. But I think with the proliferation of medications that address that, it's been it's becoming a topic of conversation. It's becoming more common knowledge. But I think, the idea, we'll just eat less. Well, it's not just about eating less, and it's not just about
Mm-hmm.
exercising more. Um, you know, it still took me 4 years to lose 70 pounds, and I was not healthy at my
Right.
lowest weight.
Oh yeah, like
Um,
it took me almost 10 years to do
yeah,
that. And it was like
right.
so like it's like you're jumping off a diving board and you're underwater the whole time. Like you're completely submerged in it and you're
Yes.
not coming up for air. It is
Mhm.
you're completely obsessed with it. And I mean, that
Yes.
was really like, you think about like roughly 10 pounds a year. That's not a crazy, like super fast, unhealthy rate,
No.
but it was so incredibly hard. And I would look at other people and I'm like, man, they just don't have to, they don't have to do this. They don't have to work
Right.
this hard.
Yeah. Right. Exactly. And then, add into that just the idea of, not giving up when you're not getting results,
Oh, that's
and
just like
when
brutal.
you're effectively staying the same, more
Yeah.
or less. 6 months at it, 5 pounds over 6 months, that's not even like reportable,
Right.
really. Like your doctor wouldn't be like, good
Right.
job.
Or you lose like 5
So
pounds
like,
really quick and then nothing for months.
right. So it can be really hard to stay motivated, which
100%.
is another, and obviously PCOS for you certainly contributed, but it's not, like I said, I mean, I've been working with a nutritionist. My goal when I was there, first meeting was, yeah, I need to really repair my relationship with food and my body, but I also am aware that I'm not at a healthy weight. And I would like to have children one day, and I want to be able to keep up with them and to also carry the child, in my body if possible. And, being a heavier weight makes that all so much riskier. So, like meeting one, that was what I wanted to do. I have not lost weight since I've been meeting with
Mm.
her, despite changing how I eat. I only eat 3 times a day. I don't snack. I don't do any of these other things. And, despite any of that, I'm not losing weight. So, in any event, in March 2021, the New England Journal of Medicine published the article titled Once Weekly Semaglutide in Adults with Overweight or Obesity. The reason for the study was stated that, quote, whether adults with obesity can achieve weight loss with once weekly semaglutide at a dose of 2.4 milligrams as an adjunct to lifestyle intervention has not been confirmed. So the researchers in this article enrolled 1,961 adults in a double-blind trial.
Which we never see in any of our
Double-blind,
research.
I
We
know.
found 10 people.
And so if you are unaware, double-blind means that neither the test subjects nor the researchers know if the subject is getting medication or if they're in the placebo group. The reason that they do double blind and the reason that it's considered a better standard for a study and for results is that it helps eliminate the possibility of implicit or explicit biases entering the experiment. So, for example, like if a participant knows that they're getting the medication, they might be trying harder with their diet and exercise interventions. The researchers maybe would emphasize the lifestyle changes more if they knew somebody was getting the placebo. Um, so it kind of eliminates that ability or that variable as much as possible. So the study anyway, and this is the study that everyone's been talking about when they talk about Ozempic face, cheater weight loss, blah blah blah, celebrity weight loss. This is the study, and this is the reason that you're hearing about this in the news. Um, and you're hearing about people taking this medication or a similar medication to help them lose weight. So this was the one that kind of like broke the glass ceiling on this medication. So they had their almost 2,000 adults enrolled in this study, they had a BMI of 30 or greater or a BMI of 27 or greater with at least one weight-related coexisting condition like hypertension, high cholesterol, sleep apnea, but not diabetes. And the reason that you couldn't have diabetes, specifically type 2 diabetes, is because semaglutide has been used to treat insulin resistance and assist in weight loss for people with diabetes since about 2014 when it was approved by the
Yeah, that makes
FDA.
sense.
So the reason that they excluded diabetes as a comorbidity with the obesity or the BMI issue is because we already know how this drug affects people with obesity or insulin resistance. So the researchers didn't want to or need to study that. The question is, can this just help people who are overweight, not people with an insulin issue? So the goal of the study was to reduce the participants' body weight by 5%. At the end of the study, the placebo group lost an average of 2.4% of their starting weight, and the semaglutide group lost an average of 14.9% of their starting weight.
Damn. Either way, those are
Yeah.
good. Those are like significant.
Well, it's a 68-week study.
Oh, okay.
So 2.4% over 68 weeks, so 15 months, 14 months-ish, isn't a ton. It's like that 5 pounds, more or less, if you're a 300-pound person. So it's not a huge amount, but the 14.9% is promising. And that was the average. That wasn't, there were plenty of people who lost more than 20%. Yeah. So researchers also noted that the semaglutide group also had greater improvements in cardiometabolic risk factors and a greater increase in participant-reported physical functioning than those who received the placebo. This study, just full disclosure, was funded by Novo Nordisk, which is the company that makes Ozempic, Wegovy, and Saxenda, which are three main medications that offer this.
I didn't realize that any of them had the same manufacturer. I just
Mm-hmm.
assumed that each like different name brand was a different manufacturer.
Nope. So Ozempic is the brand that is for people who have a diabetes diagnosis. Wegovy and Saxenda is not a semaglutide medication. It's actually a liraglutide medication, but it's still a GLP-1. Wegovy is Ozempic. I believe Ozempic, you can go up to 3 milligram doses. Wegovy only goes up to 2.4 milligrams, which is the maximum dose that this study studied. So Wegovy is what, if you don't have a diabetes diagnosis or pre-diabetes diagnosis, then your insurance, at least in the US, would cover Wegovy. It wouldn't cover Ozempic necessarily. And Saxenda is a liraglutide. You don't have to have a diabetes diagnosis for that. So something I thought was really interesting is that this study was actually conducted in 16 different countries and 29 different labs. Wow. So I think one of the benefits of this study being funded by the manufacturer and the pharmaceutical company is that they have the money and resources to make it a huge study. So what we learn, and in my opinion, they didn't say this, but I think what we learn from the global expanse of this study is that the medication works regardless of cultural differences, regional food differences, and exercising differences. Not every country can safely go walking outside for 68 weeks in a row. Many countries or cultures emphasize low impact exercise over high intensity training.
Or different dietary.
And I didn't see
just what their diet is composed of.
Right. So, and it wasn't just like Western countries. There were countries in Asia as well that were part of this study. So I just thought that was really interesting. And from what I could see anyway, they didn't divide up the results by the country of origin for the participants. They might have on the back end and just didn't include it in what was published. But it was just interesting to me that it was such an expansive study.
And there's like 1,000 different ways they can probably manipulate the data to get different answers from it, just based on the size. And really, I mean, the standards that they used, making it a double blind with so many participants from so many different places. makes it a
Yeah.
much more secure data that they're dealing with.
So specifically in this study, participants were given a 0.25 milligram dose once per week for the first 4 weeks. And then the dose was increased every 4 weeks until they reached the maintenance dose, which was about after 4 months. Also, if the participants had, quote, unacceptable side effects, they were able to stay in the study on a lower maintenance dose. So as far as the lifestyle counseling goes, participants received individual counseling sessions every 4 weeks to help them adhere to a reduced calorie diet. The diet itself was set as a goal of having a 500 calorie deficit per day relative to the energy expenditure estimated at the time they underwent the pre-study randomization. Which I think is kind of like what you do with like MyFitnessPal when you're like, I'm mostly sedentary, and like they just kind of like it. It could have been MyFitnessPal. It could have been more scientific than that. I don't know. In addition to the nutritional counseling, they were also encouraged to adhere to increased physical activity program with the goal of getting 150 minutes of physical activity, such as walking, being encouraged. And the diet and exercise was logged in a daily diary.
So 150 minutes
like
a week.
MyFitnessPal.
Yeah.
Per week. Yes.
Which
yes,
is a manageable amount of exercise.
Like yeah, I think
roughly,
it's 30 minutes,
right,
4 times
or 20
a week.
minutes a day,
is
or
basically,
that's manageable.
Yeah. An average, like an average amount of activity. It was nothing crazy, nothing like,
not like 75
you
hard.
have to seriously.
I'm so mad about that.
And so your diet and exercise was logged in a daily diary, and that diary was reviewed at those counseling sessions, but those were done one-on-one. So the results specifically, ultimately, the folks in the semaglutide group were more likely to lose 5, 10, 15, or 20% of their body weight than the placebo group. Specifically, of the 212 total participants in the semaglutide group, or 1,212 total participants in the semaglutide group, 86.4% of them lost at least 5%, which is 1,047 people. 69.1% lost 10%, which is 838 people. 50.5% lost at least 15%, which is 612 people, and 32% lost at least 20% of their starting body weight, which is 388 people. Compared with the 577 total participants in the placebo group, where 31.5% lost 5% or more of their body weight, 12% lost 10% or more of their body weight, which is 69 people. 4.9% lost 15% or more, which is 28 people, and 1.7% lost 20% or more, which was just 10 people. So yeah, I mean, it was like across the board, like pretty significant. Like 50% of those people lost 15% of their body weight over the course of a year, which is like significant. Like that's a good target.
And that's like, because you're doing it in a way that is so structured, it's also like going to be more consistent than when you're doing it, entirely on your own, just doing lifestyle changes.
Yeah. And you're getting that kind of, like we said a few minutes ago, like you're getting that positive reinforcement because the medication is doing what it's supposed to be doing, which is giving you this feeling of satisfaction so that you're not sitting there twiddling your thumbs like, well, I'm out of calories for the day, so I guess I can't eat.
Right.
And like you're just stuck. So in addition to the weight loss, the semaglutide group also had the greater reductions in waist circumference, systolic and diastolic blood pressure, glycogated hemoglobin, which is your A1C levels, which, if you don't know, measures your average blood glucose levels over the previous 3 months. And it's basically within your life cycle of a red blood cell is about 3 months. So it looks at what is living in the red blood cell. Anyway, and a fasting plasma glucose, C-reactive protein, and fasting lipid levels, aka cholesterol levels, all had better reductions than the placebo group. The semaglutide group also saw a reduction of gallbladder-related disorders and mild pancreatitis.
So it really is like part of my issue is even losing the weight, like the number on the scale was going down. I was exercising more. I was eating better and doing all the things, all the performative things that go with it. but my cholesterol didn't really change. My hypertension didn't really change. So this was also positively impacting those other factors.
Right. Which could be because
It's theirs is
it's
more tied
associated
to
with
weight,
losing
right?
weight, but or it
Right.
couldn't be. You know, it could be that this is what happens when your brain is getting those signals, then your brain, you know, is able to tell your body to let go of the cholesterol in the
Right.
blood and, you know, these other things. So, you know, who knows? But the gallbladder, I mean, you're eating less fatty
Right.
foods and, you know, whatever. But also in discussing the results, the article said, quote, weight loss with semaglutide stems from a reduction in energy intake owing to decreased appetite, which is thought to result from direct and indirect effects on the brain.
Man.
So, yeah, you just have that decreased appetite. And a lot of people have reported having like less food noise. And it's less of that like constantly thinking about food and somebody puts out a plate of cheese and crackers and you're just sitting there sweating so that you're not the first one to
Right.
go for it because you know you're not the fat one grabbing the
Right.
food first or whatever. So you just don't have that urge to be like, oh yeah, I'm hungry and I'm going to eat that, or food's there and I have to eat it because my brain is telling me you better eat the food. You know, I'm not hungry, I'm not going to eat,
Right.
like end of story. So the study also discussed the differences between once weekly semaglutide injection versus the other option that was on the market right now, which is a daily liraglutide injection. The market name is Saxenda from Novo Nordisk, but I don't know if a different pharmaceutical company has a similar one. But anyway, Saxenda is the brand name. That's a daily injection, and noted that the weekly semaglutide injection was slightly more effective and had longer lasting beneficial effects than the daily injectables. The other primary intervention we have right now for treating obesity is surgery, like
Mm.
bariatric surgery. So this study also compared the results of this study to
Oh,
results
that's
of
interesting.
bariatric surgery. Yeah, and it stated, quote, in the semaglutide group, approximately 70% of participants achieved a weight loss of at least 10%, and approximately 50% achieved a weight loss of at least 15%. Furthermore, 1/3 of participants treated with semaglutide lost at least 20% of their baseline weight, a reduction approaching that reported 1 to 3 years after bariatric surgery, particularly sleeve gastrectomy.
Damn. And like a
So it's
shorter
like,
period of time with something that's not going to require you to like lose a bunch of time from work and, go through the whole
and
pre-approval
rewire
process.
your
Right. I
colon.
mean, you really think about like in my 600-pound life, how often he's like, this is going to be a really dangerous surgery to perform for like these other
Mm-hmm.
reasons.
Well, and how often do we see like, well, people, you know, only 5% of people who get this surgery keep the weight off? Well, because their brain is still
Right, because
fucked.
it's
Like,
symptom, not the actual cause.
right.
Yeah.
Exactly. So
Wow.
it's one of those things where so I'm wondering if like with bariatric surgery now they'll do like a lower dose of
Right.
semaglutide to help
Well, and for health
maintain
insurance companies, because
if
we live in a shithole country, this is going to be a
yeah.
way um, more cost-effective technique for
Mhm.
them to ultimately lower their costs by reducing their population with obesity, and they're doing it in a way that's long term going to be better for the patient.
Right. Yeah. And even if like they're on like a maintenance dose of semaglutide after their 1 to 3 years after surgery or they start to have a little bit gaining or whatever, you know, again, if you're able to maintain this weight loss that you've had through surgery with this injection that helps your brain acknowledge that you don't need to eat all that you were eating before, then like that solves the problem, right? Like,
Right. Like on a very
like
basic
if this
level.
is such a drag on society for obese people to exist, then like this would solve that problem. So like I on the one hand, I agree the objections to celebrities buying up all of the Ozempic and
And
Wegovy off
doing
the
it like in
market
a really
are
sketchy
valid.
way where they're not actually like seeing a physician.
Or they're just not
Right.
admitting it, like which is fucking dangerous just for like the fact that they have a platform that young people look at and think is normal.
I know, like, I'm so conflicted on it.
But so
Like the celebrity
yeah,
component.
like I understand, I appreciate that there are some celebrities or like, you know, D-list celebrities like the Bravo celebrities, a lot of them are doing Ozempic, and one of them in particular was like very upfront about
Oh
it
yeah, that's what you were saying. Yeah.
and was like, yeah, no, right. And it's that kind of thing where it's like, yeah, just be honest and just say that like that's what you're doing, and like say at least you know, be honest that you're doing it this way and move
Or like,
on, because then you're not having this crazy discussion of like, oh, what's she doing? Because it's like, I don't think that there's like a reasonable argument to be like, oh, she's just a cokehead or something, but like there is something like you could be doing very other dangerous things to
right,
get thin if you're in that
right,
world, and saying no, I'm doing this under like doctor supervision is like totally reasonable. It'd be no different than somebody with diabetes being like, yeah, I have to get my A1C checked every 90 days.
right.
Like,
And
whatever.
it's like part of me is like,
Um,
oh, you shouldn't have to like answer to other people with something that's like as personal as that. But the other part of me is like, you could also be doing it in a quiet way where you're not making it like front and center of your social media presence about these like very serious physical changes that are
yeah.
happening, because people do see that and there are filters and people are filtering the fuck out of all of their pictures and going through these like really drastic visual changes, like external
Mm-hmm.
changes. It's not so much it's the dishonesty. If you said nothing
Mm-hmm.
and you weren't making it the focus of like your whole social media platform versus making it the focus and lying about it.
Yeah. And I think that that kind of lends itself, not that, and like you said, you know, you're not obligated to discuss your health with anybody
Right.
besides your doctor. You know, and I mean, really, you're not obligated to discuss it with your doctor, I guess, but like you probably ought to.
Especially if they're prescribing it.
Yeah, I mean, like just touch base.
Right.
But you know, it's that sort of thing where even a non-celebrity that is or you know, and it's that same like influencer thing where it's
Right.
like, you know, Kim Kardashian selling the teas that make you shit your own pants, like
Or Amber Rose, who was selling those while she was pregnant. That's when I had to
yeah.
unfollow. I was like, ma'am, this is not safe.
Well,
Don't tell me
yeah,
about
right. Well, and
empowerment and then
it's that
also
kind
be
of,
selling that shit while you're pregnant.
yeah, roll right. And it's that kind of thing where you yeah, so I understand the objections to it. And one of the other objections I've heard is that, well, you just regain the weight after you go off the medication. So within this study, once the 68 weeks of injections were completed, the participants were monitored for another 7 weeks. But in that 7 weeks, they were not given any medication or placebo or lifestyle interventions. So the nutritional and fitness coaching was
Mm-hmm.
stopped. So when people say like, well, they regained the weight, yeah, because you took away their
Right.
dietitian
You took away
who was like
all of the
checking in on
support that
them,
made it possible. Not said
which is
possible, but
fine.
aided it.
Certainly. And it's like, that's fine. Like, that's the limitation of the study. And it's still important information for the researchers to know that, like, okay, maybe this is going to be a lifetime medication. Insulin's a lifetime
Right.
medication for people. And it doesn't mean that you're a bad
Or
person. Like,
maybe the
what
right
the hell?
technique is that we're prescribing this with, like, as long as you're taking this, you're seeing a registered dietitian like once or twice a month to like touch
Mm-hmm.
base or whatever. Like add they can, like, insurance companies do that all the time, where if you're doing this, you have to also do this. So
Yes. And, um, well, we'll get to it. But, so like I said, I think, you know, if it's like, well, you just regain the weight, like the if you're going to take this medication, then I think there's also something to be said for, you know, at least finding a dietitian for
mhm.
yourself if it's not required by your insurance company or the doctor that's prescribing it. And, potentially making sure that you're including your household with you on this.
Right.
So like they always say with anything like this, you have to have that support at home. Like they talked about that in Weight Watchers all the time. Like people would complain that, oh, my husband doesn't want to eat any of that diet crap, quote unquote. And it's like, I mean, going back to the fat-free Cool Whip.
Right, on your sugar-free Jell-O.
But like, okay, fair. Yeah. Fair. However, there is that aspect of things where it's like, okay, well, especially for ADHD, like I do need some body doubling sometimes. Like I need PK to say, okay, now we're going to go take, I'll spell it out, but the DOG for a WALK because I'm within earshot.
Yep.
But, like sometimes I just need that. And it's not because I don't want to exercise, but like I have an executive function.
I've said to my spouse 100 times, I need you to remind me to drink water and just like take my water and refill it to force me to drink water.
Well, and I think it's, the real question is like, can you expect somebody to maintain a lifestyle change without some sort of outside support and like clinical support from somebody who's like a licensed professional and not some like online bullshit coach. But that I think also goes back to that puritanical expectation that we have when it comes to weight loss and it comes to obesity. Like if it's my fault only if I choose to eat pizza instead of a salad, and because it's my fault, I don't deserve any help.
Well, and that's the thing,
problem.
like, okay, so yeah, people who lose weight with strictly lifestyle changes sometimes regain weight. People who have weight loss surgery will regain weight sometimes. So it's like, that's not a unique... And and the expectation,
but it's seen as a personal failure.
There should be fluctuations throughout your life. Like there is not a single person. I mean, there's the occasional person, but the vast majority of people do fluctuate throughout their life. Sometimes you're going through a really stressful time and maybe you're retaining more water and your appetite is higher.
According to my dietitian, on average, you will gain 1 to 2 pounds per holiday season per year your entire life.
Yeah.
So from 20 to 60, you'll gain 40 pounds and it just stays with you. So even though like from November 1st to February 1st, you're up 10 pounds, you'll get like 8 or 9 of that off right away. Like once the holidays end, like it just comes off, but you'll still have that 1 pound. So you can be, 40 pounds heavier than you were at 20, just naturally. And like, that just happens. It's the stuff that's like more than that is more problematic when it doesn't come off.
Right.
But even that being said,
is at the end of the it's just so crazy.
No, well, and that was her point. Her point was like that 40 pounds is like normal and to like not freak out about it because you do have these fluctuations.
Like
and,
I know that I'm more active in the summer.
That's normal.
I'm going to be leaner in the summer.
Yeah.
In the winter, I'm going to be a little bit heavier.
Most people are
less active. I'm a little bit more limited in what I can be doing. And I'm just like, I'm sitting around more because there's less sunlight. So.
Yeah.
Right.
Very normal.
And it's normal to have some fluctuations. Like, I think that's another part of like, I think, when we were growing up, it was like the fear mongering that went around the holidays and winter time and, swimsuit season and all of this other bullshit.
Oh yeah. It was nonstop.
That just ascribes all of these personal failings to.
Because like, let's be real, holidays happen. Summer bikinis are in stores by January 15th. So immediately you're doing your New Year's resolution and then you're seeing bikinis. So you're immediately reminded, okay, so I just saw my whole family and I wanted to look good while seeing my whole family and I didn't. And so now I have to lose all this weight because it's New Year's and it's resolution time. And now I'm being reminded
now I only have this much time until I can lose weight and tone up. And
then swimsuit season comes and then goes very quickly. And then it's back to school and here comes the holidays and it's fall and da-da-da-da-da. And so it's just
It's like
it's
being on
never
a
ending.
right on
And
a never ending
it's
like roller coaster, and every one of those lows you're just like beating yourself up. It's just like so
yeah,
terrible.
or that like
Blech.
that spinner, that tornado one where you're
Blech.
like stuck
Yep.
against the wall and you just can't get off of it. Like that, like you're just stuck. Like it just
Yeah.
is what it is. But either way, this study, so this one that came out in 2021, really like ignited a series of studies on GLP-1 medications and GIP, which is like from that quote that I said in the beginning. So for example, like I know I'm going to ruin the mystere of podcasting, but we're recording this on July 1st. But it's just cuz Garrett's pregnant. We have to pre-record everything. So anyway, 5 days ago on June 26th, a blurb was published about a study on retatrutide, an agonist of the glucose-dependent insulinotropic polypeptides, GLP-1 and glucagon receptors. So it addresses
Okay.
all three. GIP, GLP-1, and glucagon
Okay.
receptors. This was conducted in a phase 2 trial, which is a double-blind and placebo-controlled with various doses and combination doses. So this was a 48-week study, which found 83% of participants lost at least 15% of their starting weight at the highest dose of medication, compared with 2% of the placebo group. And even at the lowest dose of the medication, 60% of participants lost at least 15% of their body weight, compared to anywhere from 92 to 100% of medicated participants lost at least 5% of their body weight, regardless of what dose they were given. And that was a study that was funded by Eli Lilly, which is another pharmaceutical company.
But at least somebody's doing the
I'm pretty sure
research.
they're the ones
Like,
that own insulin.
this isn't like that essential oil
Right.
place where it was like a very sketchy study done.
Right. Yeah. Only in-house
Right.
studies.
I mean, this company has so
like
much
this
money.
potentially is an in-house study, but this is getting published in the New England Journal of
Right.
Medicine,
Because
not
they're
in
meeting all these
the Young
rigorous,
Living
yes.
monthly newsletter. Yeah.
There's like rigorous standards that they're meeting with this, and they've got more money than the government to be able to do this.
So, this tirzepatide medication, in one study I read, showed a 5% weight reduction in 85 to 91% of medicated participants. Their range there is because of the different dosages that were given, whereas 50 to 57% of those participants at the highest two doses lost at least 20% of their body weight over the course of a 72-week trial.
That's like, I mean,
which is another
these
Eli
are
Lilly study.
way more consistent results than you typically see in a study of any kind of weight loss.
That's what really surprised me when I was doing this research, because again, like I had heard like, oh, it's just a trendy drug, blah, blah, blah. Like,
They're billing it like it's
so
like
I was really
Botox.
surprised when I saw,
You know what I mean? Like it's just this like
yes,
superficial,
it's
cutting
very,
corners type of thing.
right. Like it's just for the rich people. It's
Right.
very, like surface level. I can't think of the word right now. It's like superficial.
Right. Like it's like, it definitely, I feel like, has been talked about like as one of those things that's not really addressing the problem, when in reality it's addressing the problem on a more fundamental level than
Frivolous.
yes,
That's
than
the word I was
any
looking for.
other method to losing weight.
Yes, and that, like I said, that was what really surprised me about this research, is just that it seems like all of these different GLP-1s are truly helping these people, are
Right.
truly helping them manage their weight and manage their health, because like we said, it is helping control their blood pressure, control their cholesterol, control their A1C levels, all of these like health metrics that we can actually measure, that aren't easily manipulated. It's not just like, oh, I know that I'm going to have a weight check-in, so I'm going to exercise really, really hard this week and then go or whatever. You can't really, there's that phrase, you can't out exercise a bad diet. Well, you can't out exercise, cholesterol, and you can't out exercise high blood pressure,
I've
really.
tried.
Not in a short, not in that short of a period. So, to see this type of consistent result across different medications that are addressing the same problem, it was just really interesting. And then taken with the study that we discussed last week, it's just very clear that like we've found the thing, we found the reason for, oh, I just can't keep it off, and oh, don't let me around Cheetos, I can't control myself. And it's like, it's like, this is it, like this is the thing. It's just this gut brain communication, which the CDC identified obesity as a disease in 2013, saying it was a gut brain communication issue and a disease. And yet it's taken 10 years to get to the point where we are actively treating it
And
as
even
a disease.
Then, it's like the PR campaign for this has gone terribly, because people are viewing it as a shortcut.
Right. Yeah.
And it's a very, you're right, like it's a very frivolous, superficial way of doing it, as opposed to, oh no, this is like really, as far as any technique goes, this is the most like comprehensive approach to it, because it's getting it on the most base level.
Well, and it's kind of like, in a similar way, if somebody's depressed and they're going to therapy and they're using their light lamp and they're exercising and they have a dog and they're doing all these different things and they're still depressed, and then they go on medication and people are like, do you really
It's
need
literally the conversation I had with my doctor.
Are you just going to stay on it forever?
I was like, I am doing all of these
and
things
it's
that I
like,
can do, and I need something to take the edge off.
Right. And it's that kind of thing where it's like, yeah, I'm doing all of these things, not getting results, still struggling. And I struggle with restriction because I've had this life of dieting and cyclical dieting. So now anytime I restrict, it's like,
and not for nothing, but like there's plenty of people that can live at a normal weight without all of these other related issues.
Kind of like with ADHD, where you're like, wait a minute, like you don't need the 9 alarms.
Well, you can just sit and do something.
Why not?
Oh, in the wintertime, you can just like be your normal self. Yeah, there's all of these times where you're like,
yeah,
you feel like that, like the deck is stacked against you. You're like, why? So much easier.
And it's that thing where it, right, exactly. And so then once you realize like, oh, like it's genuinely hard for me. And it's not because I'm a bad person or I'm not trying hard enough or I didn't pray hard enough or whatever the justification is for why people are fat. It's then you're kind of like, oh, well then, yeah, I want the medicine because nothing else has worked. So like, why not? Like, I'm very pro medication. I'm not about to like, like I'm assuming my child will have ADHD if I ever have a child, but like, I'm not saying that I'm going to like slap Ritalin into their bottle, but like, it's definitely something where it's like, okay, like let's do what we can. And then if you're still struggling in school, well, I'm not going to let you struggle.
Well, and that's, you like look at all of the things that we do now that we built in over how many years of having to do it on our own, not knowing what was wrong. It kind of gives us like now we have like the shortcuts. It's like, oh, I've tried all this trial and error, try this instead. And this is the same thing. It's like all of these other things are just going to make life worse. So try this instead. Try this medication. It just sucks that they're all injectables.
Yeah. So that being said, I am currently on the daily injectable Saxenda, and as of recording, I've been on it for like a month and a half, more or less, and I've lost about 20 pounds. So
that's impressive.
It's working.
Good job.
And yeah, and I mean, I'm walking. I'm not, and I do ballet. I'm not good at ballet.
But that's the thing, like you don't have to be good at it.
Every time I look at myself in the mirror, I feel like the cartoon from Fantasia that's Dancing
In
with the
your
Alligator.
head, you're like, I look like Black Swan right now. And then when you see yourself, you're like, oh, no, I look like a cartoon that is,
I look like a hot dog that's trying to
yeah,
dance,
that's,
is what I look like.
I've done Zumba before, and that's,
But I have
but that's the
fun.
thing, and that's
I
like
mean,
such a huge, I think about all the different things that I tried as far as exercise go that I hated. And I would, for like running, I hate it. And I would like force myself to do it for, I don't know what reason, because I thought it was like the way to do it.
mm-hmm.
And then I realized like, oh, I can just walk and I
Yeah.
like that a lot better. And I'm still getting exercise and I'm enjoying doing it and I don't have to force myself. And I'm like having fun is
And
good.
I enjoyed running. Yeah. I enjoyed running. I just cannot safely do that at the weight that I'm at right now. My knees
It's
will
horrible.
not
But also
tolerate
like as you
it.
get older, like running is it's hard on you. Right.
There's also that, yeah. But yeah, so I'm on Saxenda right now. It is daily injections, which is a
That does suck.
bummer. But the reason I'm on it is because there's a shortage of the lower doses of Wegovy. So for me, my bariatric doctor, so it's not my GP that's prescribing it, it's a separate practice that I go to. But basically the plan is to like titrate me up on Saxenda and then, which is a liraglutide medication, and then I'll do a lateral transfer to the Wegovy, which is the once weekly injection of semaglutide, which from what I've seen on Reddit and just general research is fine. People seem to switch back and forth between the medications frequently, depending on different side effects they're having and efficacy questions or issues and stuff like that. So, and I will say, like, it just completely has removed my appetite. I still eat 2 to 3 times a day. And what was described to me by my doctor is that it completely slows down my digestion. So it gives my brain time to acknowledge that I'm being fed. And I think like, so what I've noticed is like I just truly cannot eat as much as I would have before. And I will eat and then just put down my fork. I'm not interested in the rest of
It's
what's
like
on
having
my
an
plate.
ulcer.
So
that's like how my ulcer was. Like I would only be able to eat like a little bit. And then I was like, nope, I don't want anymore.
Yes, but without like the pain or bloating or indigestion part of it, I guess.
It's like that, but without the symptoms.
Because it's right. So yeah, no, for me, I haven't had really significant like gastrointestinal distress issues. I've had like a few bouts here and there. I was also warned that basically if you overeat, if you eat past the point of fullness and feeling full, you will either vomit or feel super fucking nauseous, and that feeling will not leave you for days.
Oh, there's motivation.
So yeah, like a little bit of the fear of God was put into me with that one. But yeah, no, it's very like I am keeping track. I am using MyFitnessPal and keeping track of how many carbs I'm eating, and I am eating a lower calorie target than I was before, but I also wasn't tracking before.
But it probably is good too, like when you're on such an appetite suppressant, to make sure that you're eating enough some days.
Well, between that and also making sure I'm getting enough protein in particular. So I've started having like, there's the brand, I can only find it at Hannaford, but it's called Pillars, and they're these like drinkable yogurt drinks. But they're like 20 grams of protein and just like 8 grams of carbs, and it's just like an easy way to like have breakfast, because I've never been a huge breakfast person anyway, but that is a great way for me to just have like what I need to like get my day going.
But I don't like it when I first wake up unless I'm pregnant, and then I have to eat immediately when my eyes open. But no, that's perfect. Like just a little bit to like get you going that you can also like eat on the go.
Yes. Yeah. So I bring those to work with me and I'll have that at my desk when I get to work. Cause yeah, again, even first thing in the morning, not really my favorite. I will if like, especially on the weekend, if I know we're going to be doing stuff, I'll make sure that I eat before we leave the house. Um, but yeah, like it's honestly been very good. What I can say is, it has for sure stopped the food noise.
That's a really
Um,
interesting way to put that too, food noise.
I've Yeah, and I just don't, like, worry about it because I know that, like, regardless, like, even, like, yesterday for lunch, I got pizza at work, and, like, yeah, no, that's not the best choice, like, health-wise, but also, like,
Like one
what
slice
the
of
fuck ever.
pizza, two
So
slices of pizza is not going to end the world.
no, and, again, it's part of this, like, whole lifestyle thing where, like, I'm
Right.
exercising and overall I'm eating much more vegetables and yada yada. Um, and just trying to make those choices, but when I'm finally having some progress on the scale, it's like confirmation, like, okay, yes, I can do this, for another day or another week or whatever, because I'm not just like stuck in the mud,
Right.
pedaling
Because
furiously and
that,
getting nowhere, which
oh,
is how it
it's
has
just the
felt
worst.
since, yeah, I mean, really, and I know that we've talked about it before, but like, I mean, I've pretty much gained 100 pounds in the past 5 years,
Which when you
which
extrapolate it
is a
out
good
though is
amount. Like,
not
yeah, like 20 pounds a year, also for what I went
right.
through, not crazy and nothing that I'm like, how dare I? But it's also that thing where I'm like, okay, well, I've got to like make some changes here because I don't
Hmm.
want that to keep happening. Like, I don't want to keep gaining 20 pounds a year. That's not where I want to be active. I like to be able
Hmm.
to go do things and to not have to question if I'm going to like fit on the roller coaster ride or
Right.
whatever. Like the good roller coaster ride, not the food
But
roller
I
coaster
definitely
ride.
found
But yeah,
like
no, it's
I
just
just
having
thought I was like at a before getting pregnant, I was like at a point where I just wasn't thinking about like how I looked constantly. Kind of like food noise, like image noise,
yes.
like where I was constantly like self-conscious.
Yes.
How am I sitting? How does this shirt fit? Like fixing my clothes. Like I was just at a point where I was just comfortable. The amount I was eating, I was comfortable with. The
Mhm.
amount of exercising I was doing, it was just like I was at like a healthy balance. But food noise
Yeah,
is a really good, especially
definitely.
with, we've talked about like those, all of the different, um, like dialogues, monologues that are going on in your head at any given time with ADHD.
Yes.
I feel like there's always
Yeah.
like at least one food one that's going on. So to be
Yes.
able to like,
Yeah, like that video where it's like the person who's like, "Oh, a day get ready with me ADHD edition." And they're
oh
like
my God.
making coffee and they get the milk out and then they're like, "Oh, make sure you close the drawer." And, "Oh, I should make sure to write down blah 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 on the list and this that and the other." And it's like, "What do we want to have for dinner? What are we going to have for dinner tomorrow night?" Well,
What do I
I'm
have
going
in
to
the
have that
fridge? Do I
tomorrow
have to
night and I
stop at the
can't have
store
that
after work?
tonight.
I also have to do this after work. And then what else do I need to get?
Right. "Oh, I don't have time to make my lunch because I slept in, so I better make sure that I can get something to take out. But if I have takeout, then that makes me a bad person because that's going to make me fat and that's going to be really carby if I have a sandwich. But the only good places to get food from at work are sandwich places, but the other option is fried food. And I know that fried food is worse than a sandwich, but sandwiches is still bad and I can't have a sandwich because what kind of sandwich can I have?"
All
Like
the
that
time.
is constant and it's just not
That's so
there.
liberating.
And it's just the kind of thing like it really is. Like I got a sandwich earlier in the week and I normally get this sandwich from this place that's like the local version of Panera. And it's like a pilgrim sandwich with like turkey and cheddar cheese and this like cranberry mayo and stuffing. So it's like
Yum.
real carb dense. And it's delicious. And it's my favorite, but I got it without the stuffing and I didn't sit there
Mm.
agonizing over my choice. It was just like I just don't need it. And I'm not like, I'm fine, and I ate the whole sandwich, and then I had my cup of soup with it, and, like, yeah, I mean, that was a bigger lunch for me than I normally would have had, but I also only had my little protein shake
Right.
thing for breakfast and didn't have, like, a bowl of Cheerios with it, and I was like, like, I think PK was going out for dinner, and I was like, "I'm not really gonna have anything
Right.
for dinner either." So like whatever, like I'm just, again, it's that eating to the point of fullness and then just stopping. And I
And then
just
you're
didn't
not
worry
like,
about it. It just
it's dinner
wasn't
time, so
a
I have
concern.
to eat a meal. It's dinner time.
Right.
I'm not really hungry, so I'm just gonna have like an apple and cheese or like whatever. You know what I mean? Like I'm just gonna have a
Hmm.
snack, or I'm gonna wait until I feel hungry and then eat something that's going to be enough to satiate that hunger specifically.
Yes. Yeah. So it's been, I mean, I have no regrets at this point, and um I have no problem if I need to be on a
Yeah.
low like maintenance dose for a
And as
while.
time goes on, like,
Um
and they realize how effective this is for people, and they continue to do research on it, and the research becomes more available, the stigma will eventually start to wane, and these insurance companies are going to be encouraging people to do it. Like, as much as I hate Megan McCain, she was talking about
mhm.
how like her like first postpartum doctor visit, they were talking to her about Ozempic, um, which is like
Wow.
wild. But when it gets to the point where it's like, hey, you just went through this and you have this going on, this is something you may want to keep in mind as an option where it's
Yeah,
not stigmatized.
absolutely. And it's the kind of, in I mean, like ultimately I think people can say that, you know, using a medication to lose weight is stigmatized, having surgery to lose weight is stigmatized all they want, but like once you're at the lower weight, everyone still
And they
wants to
still
be
want
your
to know how you
friend.
did it.
They don't really
Right.
care how
Yeah.
you got there. Right. Like they're not judging you as like, unless, like I said, like unless you're like, "Oh, I just did a mountain of cocaine and
Drugs.
that's how I lost weight." Well, yeah, like I'm going to judge you, but like no, I did this like prescribed medication with supervision from my physician and like moderate exercise that doesn't require that I have a crazy gym membership or require that I'm up at, you know, 4:30
Oh
a.m. so I can
God, I
get to
used
the
to do
gym and
that.
do all this
Oh
before
my
I go
God.
to the office. And oh yeah, me too. I mean, like
Your 20s are a
yeah.
different time,
So it's just like the kind of thing where again, it's like, you know, I'm doing activity that fits
which is
into
the
my
only
life.
sustainable way to do
And
anything. It has to work for you.
right.
Otherwise, it doesn't work.
Mhm. No, it doesn't. And it
Right.
won't ever. And yeah, so I mean, by the time this comes out, I might have switched over to Wegovy and just do once a week,
Yeah,
which
that'd
would
be
be
great.
cool. Um but yeah, no, I mean, that's the research on it, and like I said, something just came out 5 days ago about it,
That's
that other
fascinating.
study um which had, I mean, 92 to 100% of the medicated participants lost at least 5% of their body weight. Like is just crazy. 100% of
Right, like
people.
everyone saw
Like
results.
so
Nothing is like that.
mhm. No. And, you know, to 83% of people lost 15%
And
of
you're
their
not losing it
weight,
like
like
at a scary
in less
rate
than a
either.
year. No. And you know, it's again, it's the kind of thing where okay, you go up to this max dose, you lose the weight, and then you go back down to a lower
Right.
dose and you maintain it. And you're still getting slight benefits. You're not just like robbing your brain of what that medication did for you. You're
Right.
subsisting and living in a way that, you know, a a wedding, like we talked about it when we talked about Weight Watchers, but like knowing that I'm going to a wedding on the weekend isn't, you know, a week and a half of,
Tormenting
oh God,
myself.
I hope that there's, you know, stuff I can eat. And yeah, like, and feeling like shit. Like, you know, and it's, you know, also a little bit of just being older and kind of being at the point where I'm like, yeah, this is just what my
Oh
body
yeah.
looks
Like
like.
I
Like, you know, like I'm with somebody who loves me and he loves me as I am. So I'm good. But, you know, like I said, I'm doing this for the health reasons, not the superficial,
oh
you know,
yeah.
vanity
Yeah.
reasons. Um, but, you know, not that the vanity stuff isn't
No,
also
and
nice.
to me it was
Like,
more about like it wasn't so much how I looked, it's how it made me feel. Like I knew when I was at
mhm.
a
Yeah.
place where I felt the most confident my anxiety was better, my mental health was better, and it wasn't like a weight specific thing. It was
Yeah.
like, this is going to make me feel better about myself, and that's going to make me function better in all of these different areas of my life.
Right. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Yeah, because you
Right.
feel in control. And when that food noise is quiet and it's not shouting at you all of the time, then it's so much easier to control other things that
Right.
aren't food related or exercise related. And then yeah, like it ends up being all connected. And it's the same thing, like your gut isn't a closed system, your brain isn't a closed system,
Again, like you think
your
about
life
like
isn't a closed
nutritionally the
system.
education we got, but also like the biology education, the circulatory system, the
Mm,
endocrine system, the skeletal system.
yes.
It was not about how all of these different things interact.
Right. Yeah. I need Miss Frizzle to
Bill
do that.
Nye.
Maybe we can make Jamie and Bill Nye
Oh
can
my
team
God.
up and become
Oh
new Miss Frizzle and
that would
teach
be
us
the
the things that we
greatest.
didn't learn.
Yeah, like explain to me like I'm 5, which is kind of how I felt like our hormone episodes were. Like explain to me like I'm 5,
Hmm.
hormones. And it really like
Yeah.
you realize all the different interconnected. Yes.
It's crazy. Like I had no idea. Like I had no idea that cortisol, which I've heard of, is the belly
Right, that they
fat
show in those
hormone.
fucking
Um
Nutrisystem commercials or
yeah. I had no idea that made you retain water. Like,
you
and I
said
just
that
knew
and
it
I
was
like almost
stress.
screamed.
Like, oh, if you're stressed, you're going to gain.
I was like, how many
You did scream,
times have
actually.
I been like so stressed out and then I weigh myself and I'm like, "Ah!" Like what's going on?
And that's the other thing with this medication. Like, I started it halfway through moving week,
So
which was
stressful.
objectively the worst week in the history of the world. But and still have lost a ton of weight, and being, like I said, it's not that I'm not thinking of it or not trying, but I'm not trying in the traditional sense of like, oh, I'm doing keto or I'm doing
Right.
intermittent fasting, or I'm not doing like a crazy crash diet and trying, and also like running in like this extreme heat and horrible weather that we've been having. And I'm not doing, the efforts I'm making are not extreme efforts. They're just
Right, which is
regular
how it's
effort.
like it should be long term. Like it should be a part of my schedule.
Yes.
It shouldn't be my whole schedule. I should make time for it, but my day shouldn't
Right.
revolve around it. So yeah, no,
Mhm.
that's it's
Right, exactly.
liberating is like the only way I can think of describing it. Being able to like
Mhm.
even
Yeah,
if
no,
it's
I
like
agree.
a medication that you're taking, you're right, it's like taking an SSRI. It's just like helping your brain. It's like a
Mhm.
redirect for your brain. Like the
Right. And like my brain just doesn't acknowledge that
right.
I've eaten enough.
Or
Okay.
your attention
Like,
span because of your ADHD has your brain on to the next thing. Like there's
mhm.
like there isn't connection between head and tum because your head's like already on to the next thing.
Oh yeah, my head
Right.
is like on
Yes.
Jupiter, and
I mean, same. Well, that's really fascinating. That was really good
it's
research.
true
I
though.
mean, I didn't know about any of that.
Oh,
Um,
thanks. Yeah, I mean, I had looked up the initial study before I asked my GP for
mhm,
the referral to the bariatric doctor, just to like
mhm,
see if it was real, and like what it said. But um like it was very cursory, and like just looked at it, and then that other study came out that talked about
right.
like what the brain does, and I was like, "Oh, holy shit." Like this is wild. Like I just had no idea. So then when I really dove into this one, I was just amazed at like the actual numbers, because like even looking at it, it's like, okay, 14.9% isn't that much over, the course of over a year. But then like I was thinking about the actual numbers, because they included the numbers
Right.
in the study as well, and I think it was something like, it was in kilograms, so I think it was like 15 to 18
Significant.
kilograms was the average
Right.
amount of body weight
That's
lost.
over
But
35
yeah, and so
pounds.
then I like converting it, and I was like, okay, like yeah, like per week,
Yeah.
like that's a decent amount. It's
Right.
certainly more than I've lost, per week. So it was just one of those things where like I looked at it and then I was like, okay, like this is legit and da da da. And then like really looked at it. And then there was these other studies with similar medications that have, just
Right.
amazing results. And it's the kind of thing where it's like, yeah, and if you keep up with it, even if you're not on the therapeutic maintenance dose, you're on a lower maintenance dose, then like that's all the
Right.
better. Because then like or insurance companies have to love it, because then my one prescription is going to last me,
Right.
3 months instead of 1 month.
Oh, no,
So,
I'm sure that this is going to
win-win.
be something that in the next like 10 years, the focus is very much going to shift away from like weight loss surgery to this. Um, because I mean, everything, in
Probably.
capitalism
Yeah.
comes down to money. So, but I am really glad that
Hmm.
you did this research. Um, because I think about, when I'm going to be entering postpartum, it's been something I've been anxious about for literally years. And I mean, I've gotten to the point where I
Hmm.
don't know how much weight I've gained because I step on the scale backwards when I go to the doctor and nobody mentions it, which is for the better because, again, just going to make me anxious, which like nobody needs.
Mm.
So
Yeah.
knowing like between hormones and this disconnect between brain and stomach, like there are legitimate reasons for these things, and that there are other options other than
Hmm.
ruining my own life with extreme diet and exercise.
And, possibly, it's setting also your daughter up to see, a
Right.
healthy relationship with somebody's body, because it's not going, she's not going to have to see you
Right.
weighing everything you eat and
Which has been like so
measuring everything
important to
you
me to
eat.
like
Like, yeah, I keep
have a good relationship with food prior to having children. Um, because I mean, obviously
mhm.
we've seen the other
Not
side of
that
it.
like,
It's not good. Like no
yeah.
one benefits.
No, no, for sure. Right. And like I'm not saying that I'm not aware of my portions. I do try to, especially as starting this medication, focus on the size of how much, of a chicken breast I'm having and how much of, rice I'm having.
Which as
Um,
time goes on
but,
becomes more intuitive.
you know, exactly. And, at the same time, I'm assuming if you decide to take one of these medications, you're also not going to be
Right.
injecting yourself in
Right.
front of your daughter. So like, which like is appropriate. I don't think it's necessary to
Oh yeah, no,
share
but I
everything
mean
with your
it's
child.
just like you would take any other
Um,
medication. Just like I take my blood pressure medication.
yeah, and it's the kind of thing where, especially as she enters puberty and is going through body image stuff, you can say like, like once you're, 23 or 25, like we can revisit and, see where you're at, because it could be
Right.
that it's something else, but we have to like wait for
Right.
your
And it's
brain to
more
finish
important that
growing, which I
you're
think is like
kind to
a reasonable
yourself. You're
boundary.
eating healthy food that like nourishes
Hmm.
you. You're getting exercise because that's just good for you.
Yeah.
Like you're getting fresh air. It's just like building in that balance so that you're not having to teach yourself that as an adult because I'm still figuring
Hmm.
in my 30s.
Right. Yeah. Like yeah, like I do ballet because it's
Yeah.
fun. Like I'm bad at it, but it's fun. Just being like moving for the
Right.
sake of having
Right.
fun and not moving as punishment. And um I
And
know, help me
finding
out.
food that you
Jeez.
like that nourishes you and not denying yourself everything that tastes good for
Hmm.
no reason.
And you can still do those swaps. Like you can
Right.
still swap, you know, 99% fat-free turkey for ground
Right.
beef with your tacos. Like you can still make that swap and it doesn't affect the way you
Right.
experience a taco. Um, which sounds more sexual than I mean it to, but
And the Bars Ankle High is going to continue to work on destigmatization.
yeah, so you can follow us on social media. We're on Instagram at the bar is ankle high. You can join our Patreon at patreon.com/slash the bar is ankle high. Right now, because Garrett's on maternity leave, we're not releasing Dysfunction Junction episodes. So all of our Anklet and Limbo Champion members are getting ad-free episodes during Garrett's maternity leave. So you can join as a $5 or $10 patron and get that $10 benefit. And we have merch at bit.ly/ankle-high-merch.
No, I'm going to have
Do you
self-control.
want to do it? And leave us a 5-star review wherever you
Billy!
can,
I'm just
because
kidding.
we're cute.
I'm sorry. Go ahead.
And
Yeah.
the intrusive thought won. We love those 5-star reviews, especially Apple Podcasts. But anywhere you can leave a 5-star review is great. Apple is just excellent because it gives you the option to like write out a review, which really boosts our
visibility,
exposure. Yeah. And that's all I have. So in the meantime,
do what works for you.
Yeah. And take meds if you wanna. You can leave your friends behind.
Because the bar is ankle high.
That's how that song goes, right?
Bye.
Bye.